am Trinace Riggs, School Board Chair, and the administrative, informal, and workshop session of this meeting of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, Virginia, is hereby conversed at 3:04 p.m. on this 14th day of November 2023. Members of the public will be able to observe the school board meeting through live streaming on schoolboard.vbschools.com/meeting/live. It's broadcast on VBTV Channel 47 and on Zoom. Thank you to those that have joined us in person and online. Madam Clerk, will you please announce those school board members in attendance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in the school board chamber is Chair Riggs, Vice Chair Weems, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Brown, Mr. Callen, Mr. Culpepper, Ms. Manning, and Ms. Melnick.
And Mrs. Martin is not here due to a family emergency. I haven't heard from Ms. Franklin. Have you, Ms.?
Ms. Franklin is running late. We did send her the Zoom link, but she's not on Zoom at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, school board matters and reports. Does anybody have a report or anything to advise us of? Ms. Melnick, do you have anything about the legislative committee meeting?
No. I'm sorry? Well, there is one scheduled for Monday, the 20th.
And can you tell us about the breakfast?
Right now?
Just give us the date.
Okay, right now, the breakfast is scheduled for the morning of the 21st of December at Princess Anne High School. And the governor is dropping his budget on the 20th, and we were waiting to hear what the governor had to say first, and then we'll meet that morning, the next morning.
Just so you know, the IB graduation is also that morning, 21st.
And it's all been cleared with the principal at Princess Anne High School. That date has been set with no problems.
Okay, sorry, but I knew I needed you to let us know about that. Also, the next couple of meetings are the next couple of months are going to be very, very busy. So we will probably be starting our next meeting possibly at 2 for a hearing. We're not sure. We will find out, but we at least need 6 people here for that, for the hearing that starts at 2. We will let you know as soon as we find out. It'll be a teacher hearing, okay? The next meeting on the 28th. And then on the 14th, we will most likely start early too, probably at 3. So I just want you guys to look at your schedules and look at,
Madam Chair, it's December 12th.
excuse me, December 12th. That's going to be, that's our next meeting. That's our only meeting in December, and that will be early too. So it'll probably be at 3. At 2? Okay, all right. So HYA will be coming in, and they're going to need it at 2.
So
as
what about
well.
the 28th?
And the 28th, possibly at 2. We just need 6 people. But we will let you know for sure. That's because it's a teacher hearing. It depends on if she comes or not, okay? And we'll tell you more later, okay? Okay, just wanted everybody to, be ready. Look at your schedule, and I'm sure HYA will go over that with us again, so you'll have things ready for because it's going to be a busy couple of months. Yes, Ms. Owens?
Not sure if this falls within administrative matters, but do we have an update about when our new system is going to be in place as far as our voting and computer pieces that we paid for?
Mr. Den, can you?
Good afternoon, everyone. So we are scheduled to have that live for the December the 12th board meeting. So if all goes well, We'll be using it for that particular meeting. Regina does already have some dates set out for training for all the board members. She'll be contacting each of you for filling in those training slots.
Thank you. That's
All right.
actually helpful to know when we're looking at dates to save, that that's another one coming up for training.
Okay, and there is a sign-up sheet that will be going around during our workshop. And one is for the December meetings with our superintendent, Dr. Robertson. The other one is for the meetings, the student, what is the group called, Dr. Robertson? The student? Yeah, Superintendent Student Advisory Council. There were people that were interested, and Ms. Weems had brought that up to us about it. So there'll be remember, we can only have two, no more than two. There's only, is it four, Mrs.? Only four
I think there were
meetings left.
4 between now and April.
Right, so that means 8. So I just wanted you guys to know. They're held at Salem High School, right?
So we rotate between 5 different high schools, and so the next one's at Salem High School.
Okay. And that's, I think, November 30th. It'll come around.
Yeah.
The sign-up sheet will come around. And I think that is, yeah, I have it with me, yeah. I think that's it. Okay, so, now we're going to introduce our HIA representatives with our leadership profile report. Welcome. Our consultants are is Dr. Brad Drager here? Okay. All right. It's on. Oh, theirs isn't on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So, Mr. Drager's, Dr. Drager's not here, but Dr. Ted Blazing is, and Dr. Connie Collins. So welcome.
Thank you.
Nice you. It's wonderful to be back here again and see everyone. And we're the guilty parties, at least in part, for their statement earlier saying you're going to be very busy for the next 2 months. So, and we don't apologize for that. You are going to become very busy over these next couple of months as the search is shifting gears. So today, we're here basically just to present to you the leadership profile report and the desired characteristics. And we know that you've had a chance to read them ahead of time. And Connie and I are going to go over some of the highlights that we found, not just from our 2 days that the three of us spent here, and the, almost 4,500
Yes.
participants in the survey response. Kudos to you as a school board and as a school district for reaching out and engaging the community and asking them to please participate. Please give us your opinions on what you see as the strengths of the school districts. What are the characteristics you would like to see in that next superintendent of schools? Very robust response. We know that the survey was extended an extra period of time, and your communication efforts paid dividends. So congratulations, and kudos to you for reaching out and embracing the community to come in, play a part, and make their opinions known. And they did. So with that, we're going to start right in to the leadership profile report. The last time we actually met was with you as a group was September 11 for the planning meeting. And then since then, we've had a number of things. So as you can see, there are these 8 bulleted points, the planning for the search and the community engagement. The national advertising is out there and has paid some dividends. The invitations to participate were sent out. Thank you for submitting your ideas, and thanks to the staff for making certain that everything was so well organized. And then the survey itself, the responses we said was robust, and then the analysis of it, which you have a copy of that survey report, was completed. And then our interviews and meetings, and Connie and Brad and I spent 2 very long days here. Thanks for filling up our schedules. And then the following week, we had a number of virtual meetings with individuals and with groups. So it kind of continued on even after our 2 days here. And then the data compilation analysis, we'll talk about that next. The last bulleted point, we have shifted into the recruitment phase of the search. And we've been in that phase ever since we left here after the profile interviews. And I know the two of us and Brad have all made a lot of phone calls, a lot of text messages, a lot of emails, some face-to-face meetings in recruiting candidates. And so that's going well. There are still a few candidates that are thinking about it, and we'll be nudging them here over the next few days to become engaged in some way. So, actually, that at the start of that slide, here's what's happened over the last 44 days. It should be 64 days since our planning meeting. So, Connie, why don't you talk about some
Okay.
other things?
As was said, as Ted indicated, it is indeed a pleasure to be back here again with you and with the community. We want to give a note of thanks, if we can move on to the next slide. Is it? Okay, great.
There we go,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. A note of thanks to all staff members who assisted in facilitating our time in the district. With special thanks to Cami Linetti, Anna Cleveland, Cielo Watson, Regina Toniato, and the district's tech staff and other staff members for their extra efforts in making us feel welcome, handling the necessary arrangements for our meetings, assistance at the meetings, and follow-up as needed. So we couldn't have done it without your help, and you were just phenomenal in setting everything up and making sure that things went smoothly while we were here. So thank you so much. As we take a look at the next slide, as you can see, that in order to create the leadership profile report, we have the profile and the state of the district survey. There were 4,423 stakeholders who completed the survey. That is an excellent number, so that is something we feel good about. You should feel good about it. And then we had a number of people that we met with in person or by phone, both during the days we were here, as we indicated, and even after we left, and we refused no one. Anyone who said they wanted to have a conversation with us, we spoke with them. And so it was indeed a pleasure to hear what people had to say. So everyone had an opportunity. I'm sure that if someone didn't get in, then it was not because we were not willing to converse with them. It should be noted that the survey responses was very robust. The district is to be commended for their efforts to inform and ask constituents to participate in the online survey. And we continue to have conversation with the staff to say, let's see if we can get even more participants. And so the students participated, the parents, as well as the staff. And so we want to thank everyone for being a part of this effort to get the numbers at the level that they were. This is some of the highest numbers that I've seen in a number of the districts that we've been in.
Can I say something right
Yes.
here?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out, make sure everyone knows that this entire presentation is on our website, including the 146 pages of comments, open-ended comments. And so they're all there for everybody to see, and they were written as they took them down. And I want to thank you guys, because even after we closed that week, they said, yeah, we'll go another week with the survey. So we did a whole nother week. And I know Brad, I'm not sure if you, Ted, did, or Connie, but there was a couple other extra interviews the next week that they did for us.
Yeah, all
And they
three of
were
us.
above and beyond. So thank you very
All
much.
three of us had telephone call and Zoom meetings the following week with individuals and groups, both, and we were glad to do that. And you're right, your community members, your staff members, your parents, your students, they're a vocal group. They've got things to add. So, yeah. yes.
And
A lot of pages of comments.
Right, and Cami Linetti and Mrs. Toniano have worked very, very hard, round the clock almost, with this, and making sure all of these things are happening too. So again, I want to say, I know you thanked them, but I want to thank them again and for all of us.
It was a very smooth operation for the 2 days that we were here in the school district. It worked really, really nice. And
And
that
this-
doesn't happen magically.
No, and it's an acknowledgement of how important this work is, this process is in identifying the next superintendent. So we appreciate the support in seeing that everyone hopefully was aware of what was going on at this time in the district.
Ms. Manning?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I received the email from Ms. Linetti with that link, but then when I went on the website, I couldn't find the detailed report under, I did. Yeah, there's 5 items, but I clicked every one of them and there was no long 140-some page document. I'm looking right now and I don't see it.
Yeah, that's 30-some pages.
There's one, that one says it has 22 pages. It's this presentation. Yeah, that's the first item under resources, and then it says executive summary, it says survey report, but that item's only 7 pages. Leadership profile report, that one's 35 pages. And desired characteristics, that one's 2 pages. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know that, Ms. Manning.
Here's another, this next slide is just a little different look at the participation numbers and gives you a percent. The parents, if you look at that, that should be 1,491. The one got cut off on that. So 35% of the survey participants were parents, which was nice to see. And then the teachers, 28, a little over 28% of the survey participants. Obviously, as you move into more narrower groups like administrators, they're not going to have that high of a percentage, but you still had 219 administrators participate in the survey.
Okay. As we go on to the next slide and talk about overall respondents to the online survey, selected the following areas as strengths. Now, there were a number of strengths that were identified, and wow, I know you're proud of everything that goes on here in the district, and your community is proud, and they couldn't think of enough to say as far as the services that the students receive and that the community receives. So, but we had to say, what are the top areas? What came to the top? And so when we took a look at the respondents to the online survey, they identified the following strengths of the district. Technology is integrated into the classroom. District technology infrastructure is sufficient to support the use of technology in the classroom. The district employs effective teachers, administrators, and support staff in the schools. The district provides a clear, compelling, shared vision for the future. We heard a lot about the strategic plan and other work that goes on. Facilities are well maintained. By the way, this is good information to inform the next iteration of your strategic plan. And you'll find upon basic analysis of this data that there are distinct differences between groups as to how they perceive the strengths of the district. This further analysis is found on page 6 of the survey report.
And let me just comment on that, 2 comments. Number 1, that third bulleted point, the district employs effective teachers, administrators, support staff in the schools. When we interviewed folks, in other school districts, they will almost always say, well, we have such outstanding teachers. They said that here, and then they paused and said, and support staff, and administrator, and they would start listing this litany of employees. That was unique to Virginia Beach. That was different from what we quite often hear. So that bulleted point captures all employees, not just your teaching staff. That was unique. Let me just pause on this. On page 6 of the survey report, we don't have a slide of this right now, but you're going to find some differences within groups. So if you drill down into the data, you're going to find some differences on how different groups perceived issues and strengths of the school district. So in particular, your community members, now remember, it's a fairly small N there, 200 compared to the 4,400 that completed. Only 28% gave very high marks to the district is headed in the right direction. And then it jumps up, for example, administrators had 83%. So you can see the disconnect between the two. So there are a few other examples of that you may want to take a closer look at, as Connie said, particularly as you begin to do the next iteration of your strategic plan. It may be helpful to take a little look at some of that data.
Okay, looking at, after the strengths, the top-rated competencies. Here again, there are a lot of, these were fairly consistent also across all groups, the administrators, the community members, the students, the teachers, parents, and support staff. And you can see these are the areas that were really indicated most often. Foster a positive professional climate of mutual trust and respect among faculty, staff, and administrators. Recruit, employ, and retain effective personnel throughout the district and its schools. Provide transparent communication. Establish a culture of high expectations for all students and personnel, and understand and be sensitive to the needs of a diverse population. So those are competencies that are rated top of the list compared to other competencies that were identified.
And by the way, there was greater unanimity about these perceptions between the different groups within the survey. They all tended to group around these common themes. That was good to see from our standpoint, in that there wasn't a great deal of discrepancy in that area. Well, let's turn to the community engagement. So in other words, how did we conduct our time here? Every meeting we had, to include with you or with community members, staff, whoever it might be, we basically asked three things. What are the strengths, points of pride in the school district? What are the challenges and issues confronting the district? And we tried to stretch people to not just today, but look out there 3, 4, 5 years down the road. What are you going to have to wrestle with, whether you want to or not? And then the desired characteristics, albeit personal or professional, they would like to see in that next superintendent of schools. And then we also asked many of them for names of possible candidates. And they gave us several, and we followed up with many of them. And then, as we mentioned, 146 pages of comments from the survey participants. So that was the process that we used. Who did we meet with? On the next slide, you'll see actually we met with all 11 of you, administrators, both central office, principals, superintendent's leadership team. The community members, that was a wide-ranging group. Thank you for bringing such a robust, diverse group to meet with us. We enjoyed those meetings. And let me just pause here and say, and I know I speak for Connie and Brad because we've talked about this a number of times, people were very candid with us. And after the first 5 minutes, they just opened up and provided very candid insights, and we were much appreciative of that. Teachers, to include the association leadership, and then also support staff. And so that was a little bit about just general groups that we met with.
I would add with what Peter,
Yeah,
son, I'm gonna call you
Peter Flynn is,
Yeah.
Peter Flynn and I worked together for many years.
Yes, and I said they look so much alike. What Ted and I and Brad also found, some individuals who were identified for us to speak with, we didn't necessarily get them the first time around, or maybe they weren't available, they were out of town, or they were doing something else. We continued to try, and they felt it was very important that they have the conversation with us. So I appreciated their finding the time in their schedules, persisting, really feel that the school district is important in getting the right leader. So they wanted to definitely share with us what their thoughts were about the next superintendent.
Absolutely.
Okay. When we go to the next slide, strengths of the Virginia Beach City Public Schools. When we take a look at the leadership profile report, These are the areas that were identified as the strengths, and the participants complimented the strong staff. And you don't always hear that everywhere, but this was something that came out very strong. And when they said staff, they meant all staff. So not just teachers, not just administrators, but also bus drivers, custodians, everyone, so all
Clerical.
staff, yes, clerical. So they felt really
Food
positive.
service.
Yes,
You name it.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, so the district is noted for its outstanding employees across all employee groups, the wide array of programs and courses offered to all students at all levels across the district academically and extracurricular areas were identified in general. And so over and over, we heard about the plethora of programs that are offered here within the district, and that people come to this community, to this area, because of the schools and what the schools have to offer. So we were reminded of that over and over again. Virginia Beach is a wonderful community. People want to come here to live, work, and raise families. I even ran into some families who had once been in Illinois and are now in Virginia Beach and talk about Illinois, yes, my home state. And really talk about just everything that they're getting from here and how wonderful it is
Yeah.
to be in this community. People want to come here to live, work, and raise families. The presence of the military and military families was often noted as a strength. And so people are proud of the fact that they're partnering with the military in order to get the work done for the students. Community members in particular noted the outstanding reputation of the division within the area and the state. Everybody knows about Virginia Beach, what it has to offer, and on a number of levels. And so you're to be commended for that. The availability of resources for both staff and students was often noted. And finally, people generally believe that the growing diversity of the district is a plus. So you have a lot to be proud of when we take a look at all of this information. Ted?
This is probably the most uncomfortable part of the meeting. The good news is the list of challenges is much shorter than the strengths of the school district. That's the good news.
And that's not always the case.
That's not always the case. In fact, many times it's just the opposite. Challenges, though, confronting the school district. You note right at the top, and we're working for you, so this is uncomfortable for us to deliver. The school board divisiveness, though we felt that we needed to point this out. It was such a vast majority of people that led with that. We felt a need to point this out to you. It was the top of nearly everyone's list. And so allow me to simply read from the profile report this area. Associated with the challenge of politics entering the schools, which is another issue, focus groups and individuals repeatedly expressed concern about the growing fractured and divided school board interactions. These negative board-to-board member behaviors, the confrontational interaction from board members to staff at board meetings, and the resulting feelings of mistrust can cause organizational chaos. Some board members were described as only pursuing a higher office or advancing a political agenda that create rancor and dissent, rather than focusing on student achievement and instructional issues. This dysfunction, noted by individuals and focus groups, reflects a genuine concern that board members need to have a clear understanding of their governance roles and responsibilities. Many respondents also stated that their hope the board's behavior will not limit the pool of candidates. Greater clarity and understanding of the superintendent's role is also an imperative. Systems, processes, and procedures must be addressed and put into place in order for the healthy progress of the district to flourish. Respectful collaboration between the board and the superintendent, as well as among board members, is essential. And while constructive discourse is necessary in public work, people can and should learn to disagree in a professional and respectful manner. These skills of boardsmanship need to be nurtured. High-functioning teams hold each other accountable in the best interest of moving an organization forward. The board's behavior serves as a model for students, for staff, and the community. Exhibiting respect, collaboration, and fostering a climate of mutual trust will be the first order of business for the new superintendent in collaboration with you, the school board members. And the board has an equal responsibility to that role. So that's a difficult part of this meeting, but you needed to know that. It's so overwhelming that we heard from so many different people representing so many different walks of life in the community and within the school district. So we'll move on. Politics, divisive politics creeping into the school district. You're not alone on that, by the way. We've got a lot of company on that across the country. Recruitment and retention of staff came up, though we smiled because we asked others and they said, well, we started the year fully staffed. That's incredible. So whatever you're doing is working. Just continue to do it. Now, it could be that the folks we were meeting with mentioned this as a challenge because you recently undertook that as an initiative. You increased salaries and compensation levels because of recruitment and retention of staff. So that might have been in the forefront of their minds, and hence the reason that they mentioned it. And then the demographics of the community are changing. Some folks noted that. They particularly noted that the children coming into the school are from different backgrounds, different cultures, different income levels from many of the adults in the community. And so I thought that was pretty perceptive of those that we dealt with. And then again, a topic that's on the forefront of everybody's minds here are facilities and the need for updating, remodeling, and replacement, and obviously the fiscal price tag to do that. So I thought the folks we visited with pretty succinctly were able to identify the issues and challenges confronting the school district, and they tended to just stay on these topics. There were a few on other things, but these really bubbled to the top. Okay, so what do we do with all of this? So now we've got 4,000 respondents on a survey. We've got, we lost track, quite candidly, but probably close to 1,000 of folks that we visited with in some way. How do you take all of that and combine them together to come up with the desired characteristics? And so that was our challenge as we began to look for things.
Okay, so as Ted has said, our next task was to pull together the information from the surveys as well as from the meetings that we held to compile what is this leadership profile report. So what is the community as well as the staff as well as you board members, et cetera, are saying that you're looking for in the next superintendent. So we looked at the desirable strengths, challenges, and characteristics by respondent category from the administrators, board, community, faculty, staff, parents, and students, and the most desirable qualities mentioned by the group. And so after doing that, this is what we came up with.
So this next slide is kind of fun, if for no other reason. You can print this out in a Word format, and I just put it into an Apple. Here were words that were most frequently used, and if you drill down in there, you're going to find just about everything in the world. So that leads to a lengthy list of desired characteristics. But when you boil them away, we found 4 major areas. A communicator extraordinaire. Communicator extraordinaire. A relationship builder is very high, not all different kinds of relationships, both internal and external. And politically astute, goes almost without saying. And then a broad category of management and leadership skills. And finally, pedagogical expertise, an education leader. So let's take a closer look at each of these 4 areas.
Okay, so after reviewing all of the input, What do we mean by communicator extraordinary? In some instances, people say, in all of these areas, you want someone who can walk on water and can do everything and not miss a beat. And usually that person doesn't exist, but we want to get as close as we can. So this should be someone who possesses strong communication skills with all parties, both internal and external. Establishes and employs a communication flow of critical issues, actions, and decisions on an ongoing basis. Communicate as an effective spokesperson for the school district, able to clearly articulate the district's vision, successes, and challenges across all platforms and audiences. So this will guide our work as we move forward as a search firm in recruiting and screening of candidates. Additionally, the board members will reference these characteristics as they interview and review the slate of candidates. It's always important when you ask a community to be a part of coming up with what are you looking for in the next candidate, what are the strengths of the district, what are the challenges, et cetera, that they know that you have heard what they said and that it hasn't been, work that is futile and will not go anywhere. They want to know that you heard what they were saying and that you're taking that into consideration as you do the interviews and look at the candidates, because after we finish this, then it becomes the board's work to decide who will become the next superintendent. So that becomes important as we move forward.
Let me just pause and talk about the communication piece of this. If you look at the survey report, there's a disconnect between how the community and how parents see communication from the school district and how your internal audiences see communication. So obviously, that's an area that needs some attention for whatever reason. And so that was part of the reason that this bubbled up towards the top.
Okay.
You want me to cover this one? Relationship builder and politically astute. This is quite a list. But accessible and approachable, everybody wants that. They want to be able to walk up to the superintendent. They want to see that superintendent in the schools. They want to see him in the community. It's what I call the Elvis effect. They want to see Elvis is in the building and visibly engaged in the schools. This third bullet fosters a culture of trust and respect, both internally and externally. That's, of course, but that is really difficult work to build that level of trust. And once it's there, it's magic. Sparks will fly. Politically astute and understanding the community and its social strata. Obviously, intergovernmental alliances are huge here in Virginia, where you have fiscally dependent school divisions. So, working relationships, we talked about that earlier, not just with you, but with staff and the numerous school and community organizations. And then the last two are talking about board governance and what they will need to bring in their professional toolkit into this position. Management, leadership skills?
Yes, next slide, management and leadership skills. This person should be able to create a strong focus on the recruitment and retention of talent, with an emphasis on recruitment of staff that reflects the demographic of the student population. So not just bringing in additional staff, but the importance of diversity was also mentioned and that should be looked at. Possess fiscal acumen in the management of resources. Vision, I remember reading that it's a huge budget here. And so how do you manage, and do you have experience managing a budget of the size of the one here in Virginia Beach? Possess at least vision, in concert with others, develop a vision and effectively communicate the vision to internal and external stakeholders so that everybody knows what this district is about, where you're going, what the focus is.
And a laser-like focus on that vision. Laser-like focus on that vision. Keep it in the front of everyone.
The next slide talks about the importance of pedagogical expertise. Leads with a depth of pedagogical knowledge in the many aspects of providing an effective educational experience for all learners. Everyone is proud of where the students are performing, but then what's the next rung on the ladder?
Right.
So how do you take everything to a higher level and not just remain stagnant? And so they want someone who is knowledgeable of what the research says, what the present, what's happening in education today and where education is going down the road. Understand and utilizes the latest research, trends, and innovation within the curriculum, instruction, assessment, and special education. Special education came up a number of times.
Did.
And meeting the needs of special ed students. And so it sounds like there's some concern about that and that is not being met at the same level as other students. Courageous in defending and implementing recommendations that benefit students. So this sounds to me like an advocate for all students, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, where they may live, or what their educational level. How do you advocate for all?
And we chose that word courageous for a reason. It's not always easy to make a recommendation that many times is not popular, but it's the right thing to do.
Yes. Self-confident and decisive, able to make difficult decisions. And it's not always easy to make difficult
No.
decisions, but we are in this business to do what's right for kids and to advocate for them. Establish a culture of high expectations, not only for the students, but also for the personnel.
That's a short list, right? I mean, there are a lot of people out there with all those attributes. And then finally, we added this, by the way, in our posting. Obviously, they need to be able to become certified in the state of Virginia. And the person needs to become, if they're not already, thoroughly familiar with the history, culture, and needs of the school district and the city of Virginia Beach and the state of Virginia. So those were just kind of some things. Allow the process to continue. Trust the process. And again, you are to be commended as reaching out to staff, to students, to parents, and community members to allow them to participate in this process early on. And then we'll see where this might lead us. So we'll come back to see you in 4 weeks from today. And at that meeting, you're going to get put to work. So we'll be talking about questions for you to consider, to ask of each of the candidates who will be invited in to participate. Think of this like a giant funnel. So you've reached out to literally thousands to ask for their input. And now it begins to narrow down. And later here over the next 2 months, there are only 11 votes that count. So we look forward to continuing on this journey. Questions? Connie and I have been rattling on here. Stop us. What questions do you have for us? What can we clarify?
Mr. Callen.
I'm looking at a list, and it's not numbered, so I can't direct you to it, but it has to do with the different categories that were interviewed and the percentage that they represent and the numbers that were associated therewith. When you look at a group like that, is there, knowing that all categories are important, when it comes to negative comments, is there any particular group that, if there's a preponderance of negative comments from that group, does that cause you to have your antenna go up a little bit quicker, and as a result, maybe it's indicative of some things that we need to be mindful of?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say groups. I wouldn't say groups. But there were some individuals that we met with that have, by appointment or by election, significant positions in the community. And when they start leading with an issue or challenge, and 5 minutes later they're still on that issue or challenge, we're still taking notes rather than putting our pencil down and saying, let's move on. I don't know as to what groups though. I wouldn't,
No,
I mean, even students many times are very perceptive. And in the unvarnished conversations, you have with students. I don't think groups.
Ms. Manning?
So I think this is fantastic. I love all of the community input. I think that, there is a lot of division in there about our board, but I think that's one thing that our board agreed upon. We all wanted a lot of community input, I think, and so I'm so thankful for that. I love the communication aspects that have been highlighted, the relationship builder parts. I think it's all fantastic. There's just one word in here that I'm challenged by a little bit, and it's under the relationship builder and politically astute. The last bullet point, it says that the superintendent would be experienced in leading boards in governance. And I have trouble with that word leading because the superintendent does not lead the board. I would prefer a term experienced in supporting boards and governance or something like that. I personally am not looking for, and I think that our role as school board members is not to be led by the superintendent. So I just wanted to kind of point that out and get your perspective on that.
Yeah, or a partner.
Yeah.
I think
Might be better.
that's appropriate,
Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
Thank
change
you.
can be made.
Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work.
Ms. Brown?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And, I had a wonderful experience with my one-to-one interview with Dr. Drager. He asked a lot of questions. It was a very good conversation. So I feel very confident that the community got that same type of interview. So thank you for your work on this. So this 146-page compilation of community input, I am unable to find it. Is it copied and pasted verbatim?
It is, I've got them checking out the
Okay.
didn't take anything out.
Okay, and that's great. I just want to have the chance to, read all of that input and really, see where there was agreement and what we can take on board and,
Yes.
as we interview, which things I need to be cognizant of. And I do think, we know that there's a little bit of controversy sometimes on the school board. We were on the cusp during this interview period of, a project of great controversy to the community. So, I don't think that it's any surprise that kind of ended up in there. But on a final note, I do actually, and I had marked that I would prefer partnering with school boards as well, because otherwise that indicates that we're just here to kind of rubber stamp things. So otherwise, everything looks really great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Normally, by the way, the lengthy number of pages of comments, the folks who participated were well behaved. And by that I mean, normally we have to redact a number of comments. Now, you're gonna find, if you look close enough, maybe a couple. But by and large, we all comment, did you see anything? No, well, read it carefully. Well, I did, so.
Yeah.
I've read
compliments-
them.
Compliments to the students, the staff, the
Yeah.
parents, the community members.
I've read off 146 pages, and it's small print, so it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, it takes a while.
But I agree with you. They were very well behaved. But definitely it is word for word because sometimes when they were writing it, they repeated themselves. So you can see that none of it was edited at all.
No.
So you'll be able to see that when you read it.
We don't take care of spelling or grammar.
No.
It's, here's the unvarnished written comment.
And thank you for your work. Thanks.
Mr. Callen.
Last question from me. At this point in the process, have you been pleased or surprised by the number of candidates that have made themselves available? Were you overwhelmed, or were you surprised that there was less responsiveness than you would have thought?
Well, we are living in different times.
Yes, we are.
And where it used to be that you received an overwhelming number of candidates for positions, with the times we're living in now, with the political environment being what it is, with people having to make decisions about moving their families and not knowing if they'll be able to stay in a position after that occurs, and just wanting to know about the board. Everybody wants to know about the board, and now many board meetings in many districts are televised, and people can see how the board is, et cetera. And, and I've talked to some people from Virginia and outside of Virginia, as far as possible candidates are concerned. Then some are just sort of hesitant because of some of those things. Some are feeling that they're ready for the next step in their career, and there are some people who may think they're ready for the next step, but we know they're not ready for the next step.
Right.
And so we say, you maybe need to look at a different type of district or a smaller district. So it's been very responsive, but it's not over. We're still
Yeah.
recruiting and talking to people.
I think another observation, as Connie stated, it's a different era. Days gone by, you'd post a position like this, you'd stand back and you'd have applicants. Your biggest job would just be sorting and screening applicants. That's not the case anymore. And that's just not the case in Virginia Beach. That's the case nationwide. However, the three of us, as I said earlier, have spent a lot of time on phone calls, emails, texts, reaching out to candidates. That response has been encouraging. Now, not everybody that we've reached out to has said, yeah, this is perfect. It's, no, the timing's bad, or no, I can't do it right now, or no, I just don't want to move to Virginia. But our response to the one-on-one recruitment has been pretty good. And we, like I said, we still have a number of others that are in that thinking about it category. And by the way, we've started screening, and now we're going to be doing interviews with folks here starting right after Thanksgiving. We've got several days. In fact, we've got a conference phone call tomorrow to plan our strategy on that. So.
Okay, thank you so much
We
for all
shall
of the
see you
time.
4 weeks from today, and your lives are going to get busy.
Was that our signal to sit down? Real pleasure up to
Thank
this
you.
point, and we look forward
Yeah.
to the next phase in this
We do
process.
too. Thank you
Yes.
so much for all the time that you've taken and spent. Okay, so that brings us to our C, calendar timeline for 2024, 2025. Welcome, Matt Delaney, our Chief Schools Officer, and Dr. Admon Alexander, Director of Family and Community Engagement.
We're going to let all the alarms go off for a few moments, so they're going to hit at everyone sitting around the table. Good afternoon, Board Chair Riggs, Vice Chair Weems, members of the board, and Dr. Robertson. As you may recall, we provided a brief on the calendar developmental process in the board retreat in July. This presentation will again review the calendar development and the adoption timeline. We're going to share for the community's purpose the information again on factors we consider when developing a calendar. We're going to remind the community on the decisions that were made regarding our current calendar, as this is the first year we've done a pre-Labor Day start. We're going to share some general feedback we've received from principals, teachers, and some central support staff regarding the opening of school, and I may share some additional data that we've been tracking with this change in the start of the year. This timeline on the slide was presented to you, the board at the retreat. In the next month, the Departments of School Leadership and Communications Community Engagement will work on creating multiple draft calendars that meet the school division's educational needs. As a reminder, in the last calendar development process in 2021, we developed 2 years' worth of school calendars. At the retreat, the board requested that we move toward a one-year calendar adoption process. We're going to convene a calendar work group in January. They will review, revise, and develop calendar options. The work groups will consist of central support staff, as well as school administrators, teachers, parents, community groups, and a student representative. We'll present the options also to Teacher Assembly, along with a survey to families and staff in January. The survey window for this year is planned for January 8th to the 19th. We'll do a presentation for the board and the community as an informational item in February, and we'll look for action to be taken by the end of February. So these next couple of slides I think are really important for people to understand as we look at developing and creating draft calendars. There's several factors that we must take into consideration. In addition, changes that seem small may not actually be small once we take into account that we have to have 181 instructional days. We have 12 required staff days, in-service days, which leads us now to 193 total days available. And when are those days available? I'd also like to take note, because this sometimes gets missed, that our teacher contract consists of 200 work days. We need to take into account required seat hours, the impact of transportation on our seat hours, and the equal distribution of days in a quarter and a semester. We often get questions, and I know you do as well, why are other school divisions in the area able to get out earlier in the summer after implementing a pre-Labor Day start? It's a pretty simple question with a more complicated answer. Most school divisions in the area have more minutes in their day, meaning they have an easier time meeting the state seat hour requirements. We would struggle to meet those requirements at the high school level if we got out earlier in June. We then get asked about adding minutes to our school days, and we've shared this before. It really comes down to a transportation issue. As we have shared, adding time to the high school day while maintaining the same schedule for all other school sites would require additional school buses, school bus drivers, and support staff. For example, 15 minutes would equate to approximately 85 buses and bus drivers, 1 area supervisor, and 2 fleet technicians. Other factors that need to be addressed is the observance of holidays, the length of our Thanksgiving, holiday, and spring break, as well as the number of adjusted dismissal days during the year. So let's again take a look at our current school calendar. By starting earlier, we were able to provide staff with teacher-requested staff days and flex days during the school year. We also added in a holiday the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, rather than the typical adjusted dismissal day that we've done on those days. These were things requested by both teachers and families and were approved by the board. We also reduced the number of adjusted dismissal days, as these tend to be a hardship for parents, as well as have an impact on student and staff attendance, and I'll give you an example of that a little later. At the beginning of the school year, principals, assistant principals, and central support staff were asked to provide a response to a plus delta regarding our pre-Labor Day start. The slide on the screen captures the general themes from the group. On the plus side, principals and assistant principals reported that having 2 4-day work weeks allowed for relationship development with students, routines and processes to be reinforced, thus allowing for a smoother transition for students. Appreciation was expressed for the additional staff days during the year, especially the inclusion of the October staff day, the additional day at the end of the first quarter, and the staff day in March. From a Delta standpoint, schools reported that the 5 in-service days felt rushed. In the past, they had 7 days for in-service week. This led to less time for in-house professional learning. As can be expected with the pre-Labor Day start, the time was condensed for summer planning, and our central support staff had less preparation time. For example, last month you received a brief from the Department of School Division Services that outlined the work they accomplished with regard to school maintenance, custodial services, hiring and training drivers, and hiring cafe staff. As we noted at the time, they did an amazing job. I'd also like to note that the early start condensed the time to hire teachers and school-based staff. Mrs. Woodhouse in the Human Resources Department was prepared to address these challenges as they made adjustments to hiring timelines at the front end, which assisted with ensuring our schools were staffed to the best of our abilities. You've also received a brief on our vacancies from Mrs. Woodhouse with regard to the opening of school. I'll also share with many of my one-to-one conversations with principals when I just said, how'd it go? How was the start? Many of them said it was the best opening they've had in years, and that's even pre-pandemic. So it might say that how the start last year went, but I think that was a great indicator as well for many of them felt it was a positive start. Prior to taking questions, I want to return to our timeline slide because it may seem to many that we need to speed the process up. I would like to note that it's important that we take some time to evaluate the impact of our current calendar and the adjustments that were made. For example, we want to get an indication on the impact of the inclusion of additional staff days and flex days. We had a staff day in October, staff day on November 3rd, and flex days on November 6th. I spoke with high school principals today to ask about that flex day, and they said many teachers took advantage of having that time. In our survey, we'll look to gather feedback on the impact of those days. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to judge the impact on the staff day in March prior to adopting the new calendar. This March staff day was one that our teachers and staff felt was really important, as it breaks up that time between the February holiday and the spring break in April. For those of you that were teachers, you know that long slog that goes during that period. We reviewed the attendance percentage for the August start date to compare it to September of the previous year. Our August attendance rate over the 4 days was 98.5%. Our September attendance rate for this year was higher than last year, and it was at 95.48%. So it doesn't appear that our attendance rate was negatively impacted by the earlier start. We're also looking at the impact of last week with the need for substitutes and student attendance. As you know, last week we had a flex day on Monday and holidays on Tuesdays and Friday. Our staff attendance was strong on Wednesday and Thursday, and our student attendance was higher than last year on both days. We'll be reviewing the impact of removing adjusted dismissal days prior to the Thanksgiving break. We traditionally have a student attendance rate of approximately 80% on that adjusted dismissal day prior to Thanksgiving break. We will monitor the attendance rate on this upcoming Tuesday prior to the break. This is a full day. Students have off on Wednesday, so we can provide a little level of comparison in that nature. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Can I answer that question, or?
She's after me, so.
I didn't want to break
Sorry,
protocols.
but I had already, and I think you answered it, but I still wanted to reiterate. You were talking about the percentage of people, students and teachers that were here this past week.
Correct.
With how broken up it was. My question is, and I don't know if that answers it maybe. Was there a lot, or did you even ask this question? Was there a lot of teachers that took the whole week off? Because I had several that I knew that did.
Yeah, we were nervous about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked with Ms. Woodhouse's team to say, tell me what the attendance staff data looked like. It was not out of the ordinary. It was actually stronger than it was last year. Our staff rate pre-Veterans Day last year, we had more vacancies than we did this year. And we also had an outstanding fill rate of substitutes on those 2 days. So it did not have a significant impact from a staffing standpoint. Whether or not how many took the full week, I didn't look at that answer, but I did look to see what was the impact of staff vacancies those 2 days. And it was not something that was alarming to us as a result.
And it did not leave you guys reaching for substitutes. You just said that too.
No, correct.
Because I've had parents or the public ask me about, well, why was it so broken up, and so I'm glad you went over each thing.
Yeah, and we looked at that student rate as well, which we're very pleased to see that it was higher than last year as well.
Okay.
So we are trying to look at those indicators to ensure that some of these decisions were getting the good impact. And we can all make assumptions, but knowing that many took that flex day, I think they felt like they're ready to come back to start the second term. As you know, as teachers, we don't always want to miss that first day of the second 9 weeks.
It was kind of like a mini fall break. I mean,
There was
someone
rumors that the
even
airport was crowded with Virginia Beach City personnel.
someone even suggested how you could make it a whole week of a fall break. I've seen that also out there. So, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that, Miss Anderson.
Thank you. So on one of the newsletters that went out recently, it stated that students have Wednesday off. And you just now stated that students have Wednesday off. But I was under the assumption that we were closed.
We are closed, so teachers are off as well. We are
Right,
closed on that
So
day.
that needs to be addressed because it was sent out in a family newsletter that students had the day off. And I got several teachers who sent me, a message and said, well, I know that students have it off, but we think that we have it off as well. And so it just needs to be
We'll
clarified.
clarify that if it's gone out that way, but they are certainly off that day.
Okay, so, looking at
And we
what
are
you've.
closed, I'm sorry to go back, and we are closed.
And we are closed on Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Correct.
Thank you. Also, so looking at this information that you're giving us, it looks to me like we're leaning toward another pre-Labor Day start, leaning that way. I'm not saying it's definite, I'm just saying that it looks to me like all the information that you've given us is positive so far. And I also was wondering about not only teachers being out last week, but I wondered how many students took the extra 2 days and just called it a whole week out. Or parents took the week with their kids and said, well, they're only gonna miss 2 days, so I'm gonna take them, we're going to Disney World or we're going wherever. So I wonder, because, now that we have to extremely worry about our absenteeism with students, I wondered how that was affected, and so.
And that's why we looked at it, and as I said, it was a higher rate than last year in terms of our attendance rate. It wasn't above 95%, so we did have some absences for sure. But why, I can't give you that data.
Right. Well, from a parent perspective, if I was planning to go someplace, and my kids only had to miss 2 days, from a parent perspective, I would say, okay, let's take this week and go. From a teacher's perspective, you want them there when you're there, and you don't want your students to be out. And then from a school board perspective, I certainly don't want to be penalized because we only had a 2-day week for our students, and people decided to, take the full week for their students. So I do think it's something to look at. And it kind of depends on, when the holiday falls. Technically speaking, I guess Friday was the legal holiday, but really and truly, November 11th is Veterans Day, not Friday, November 10th. So I wondered about that as well.
Well, you bring up some interesting questions. If you take a look at that the Monday flex day, we traditionally did not have a 2-day staff day at the end of the first quarter. So this is a little bit of the give and take that we talk about through the calendar process. That flex day, which I think our teachers really valued and saw great value in, created a 2-day week for students. So that's the conversation that comes up. There's a give and take throughout all of these minor changes, and so it would become, do we remove a flex day and have a 3-day week to ensure there's more there, or do we say this was of great value to have staff have this opportunity, and was the impact great of student attendance? It wasn't more so than the previous year, and that's what I was looking at.
And then the other thing is, because we are closed on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, there's another week of a 2-day week for our students. And I wonder how many parents will say, we're going to be gone the whole week. We're leaving on Saturday before, or
Yeah, and
whatever.
it's what we're going to look at, because
I
we
just heard
traditionally
this
are right
is-
around 80% on that adjusted dismissal day. If you ask me if I'm a betting man, I think our attendance rate's going to be higher on Tuesday because it's a full day, and the parents know we're completely off on Wednesday and we can
Right.
travel. So
Right.
that's something we're going to look at, and we'll bring that information back when we get with the calendar.
I just
development
heard
committee.
statistics from transportation, the National Transportation Board, and they indicated that more people are traveling on the Saturday before Thanksgiving now this year. Don't know why that is, but they indicated that this past that the Saturday and the Sunday before Thanksgiving will be major travel holidays. So,
Okay, Ms.
Thank you.
Franklin?
Thank you. Mr. Delaney, just to clarify, you just said that the division was closed, and that includes 12-month employees?
No, 12-month, we either have to take leave or work,
Okay.
but 12-month is
Okay,
working.
still expected. So not
we're still,
technically.
we won't be answering phones if we're here, but we're working.
Okay. That wasn't my full question, though. So I did have, if we would go back to slide 3, we had some discussion last year about seat hours, how some divisions consider the hallway time part of the seat hours. And so just to kind of revisit that for a second, I think that we had left it as you were going to look and you know, what other divisions were doing, how that impacts our division. Was there any decision on that in terms of?
No, we haven't had any decision about moving our
discussion.
seat hours to that
Okay.
end. I think that's a discussion we'll have moving
Okay.
forward, but
Because we
we
do.
just haven't felt comfortable to say
Sure.
that's seat hour time.
Sure. Okay. Well, and I just wanted to kind of follow up on that. And then this morning, I did visit an elementary school, and I'm just going to gush for a second. It was my first day tutoring, and I just had a fantastic time. Anyway, but outside of that, so it gave me an opportunity to talk to some of the elementary staff. And one of the concerns that they had was that, especially for elementary schools, you know, having 2 days is really difficult when you're starting a school year with new children coming in, parents having to get acquainted to the school, you know, and how difficult that was. Now, I did take a look, and next year it looks like the 26th would be a Monday, so that's a little different than what we had this past year, and Labor Day actually falls on a Monday again. So their thought was a full 4-day week, the very first week, is really helpful, especially for elementary schools, to be able to really make sure that the kids get in the door, they get acquainted with their schedules, because having a 2-day week and then a long weekend and then, you know.
Well, if I can just,
Okay.
we had a 4-day start this year. We did 4 full days. We didn't have a 2-day start. So we went Monday through Thursday. Friday was off, and then we went Monday through Thursday again and had
Okay.
Friday off. And to be honest, that's where that plus came, where people saying we had back-to-back 4-day weeks.
Okay, well, I don't know that, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
that was some of the feedback that I heard, so I just wanted to present that, but I will make sure that we get back with that
Yeah.
information. But anyway, but they did say that ensuring that we had 4-day weeks, especially at the elementary school level, is really helpful to them, because, you know, with the little guys, they're and gals, they're a lot harder to get back on track with short weeks.
And that was
So,
reported, the 2 4-day weeks was reported as a major positive.
Okay,
Believe it or not, many of our teachers said it was nice to be able to enjoy Labor Day weekend without worrying about that opening
Okay.
first day. I know as a principal, I used to lose sleep on that Monday night of
Yeah,
Labor Day, so
yeah.
it was nice to have that already in place.
okay, well, thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Weems.
Thank you. Yes, the November, I think we can all agree, is very not desirable, in my opinion. So I'm going to really be looking for a lot of great innovative ideas of how we can make sure this doesn't happen again next year, because we basically in 6 days, 6 school days, we were off 4 out of 6 possible days, being off the 3rd, the 6th, the 7th, and the 10th. So that leads me to some questions about voting. I know we closed schools because some of them are voting locations, and I understand the safety issues. But sometime in the near future, could I have this information? How many of our schools are currently being used as a voting place? How many people voted in this last election there? And is there any way that we can combine precincts so that we don't have to? Well, we can't, but somehow talk to people, powers to be. I mean, if it's such a low voter turnout at certain schools, I just want to look at that. I just want to look at that day, because I understand the reason why we went to that, and I want to look at that day. Because I really want to try to get it where it's not so choppy. I agree with Ms. Franklin, especially for the elementary, to have 2 days going to school for that week, and then you're back in school for 8 days, and then you've got Thanksgiving break, and then you're back for 2 weeks, then you've got winter break. I mean, or 2.5 weeks. So it's very, very hard to. I know we're worried about attendance, but I'm worried about the ability to be consistent in our
Right.
instructional delivery. And part of that is consistently being in school.
Right.
And so I'm really going to be looking at that. So if we could just kind of get the voting day, that data, that would be helpful, I
Sure.
think. Also, when we sent out a survey, and I don't have the last survey, and if I could have a copy, could someone send me a copy of the survey that we did for the calendar?
Sure, I have
last
a
time?
copy of it. I'll have
Okay,
Dr.
if I
Janicki
could
send one to you.
refresh that. Because I know that, and I don't remember it, and I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me.
I
but
have it if you want to ask a question.
Well,
I do
I
have a
know
copy of it.
a lot of community people said afterwards, like, but y'all didn't ask me, like, do you want to start before Labor Day, but you still get out late? You know, that wasn't an option because a lot of my community people and neighbors are like, Carolyn, yes, I put in there that I wanted to start before Labor Day because I just assumed that we were getting out early, but that wasn't an option. So can we make sure that this survey is not, yeah, just points a lot of things out so that, because I think a lot of people just assumed that we start early, we get out early, and when they say we start early and we still get out mid-June, they didn't like that. So if I could have a copy of that survey to look at and then make sure that I would like as a board member to be able to preview that survey, be able to look at that survey before it goes out to our community, if at all possible.
Sure, and I'll just share with you, the survey did have an FAQ to it and a lot of other data points that were there. And I think to your question, your point, much of what we share today is really important for them to understand around the 181, the 193,
Right.
the 200, and sometimes, as many times as we say it and send it out, it
Yeah.
gets lost in the
That was
shuffle
just a
bit.
common thing that I got from community
would
members.
agree,
It's like, wait, I wasn't asked that. Because
That's correct.
I would have voted differently or would have filled out the survey differently.
Mr.
Thank
Williams,
you.
I also want to note that the state did change and make Election Day a holiday.
That's
That
what I
a
was gonna
change.
ask,
That
yes.
wasn't a choice that we had.
Yeah, does
Yeah.
that mean we have to close?
That's something I think we looked at was whether, the point, when they changed, it was for the point to encourage voting. So I think that's why you followed
If we
it.
could just, yeah, if we could just look at it and like some holidays, we still go to school for national holidays. So if we could just look at that, that data, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Callen.
You've made reference several times to a term, adjusted dismissal days, and it seems to have a significance, and although it also seems to be self-explanatory, can you give me an example of what is meant by the term adjusted
Sure,
dismissal?
it's just, to be real brief, it's a shortened day. So on a typical Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving break, high school students would dismiss at 11:30, so their typical 2 o'clock. Elementary would follow right around 12:15 or so. I may be getting the times wrong. And then middle school about 1:30, 2 o'clock. So they were getting out about 2 hours earlier than typical on those adjusted dismissal days, which counts as a school day, and students are marked present. But what we find at times is that the more often Thanksgiving might be the wrong example, but there's been other times we've done that for the end of a quarter, for grades day, for example. It can create a challenge for parents that have to, in the middle of the day, ensure their his child is picked up. Sometimes we see attendance issues with staff as a result of it as well, because it's an awkward day. It's not a traditional day, and so to make meaning of it is a challenge. So to Ms. Anderson's question earlier, it's going to be interesting to watch Tuesday of this week, to see that impact of a full instructional day on parents saying you're going to school today and we're going to travel tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see that. I hope that answered your question. All right, you're welcome.
Ms. Manning.
So I agree with Ms. Franklin and Ms. Weems. I've kind of gotten the same feedback, and especially I think this year is the first year I've not gotten any phone calls complaining about transportation, go transportation. But it was much more than made up for by the complaints of why in the world are you starting school early but you're not ending early? And I mean, I was inundated from people on all sides. So I think that is definitely a common theme. I don't know if I would be able to vote for a calendar that was the same as this year's for multiple reasons. My question is, we're not scheduled to vote on this, Madam Chair, until the second weekend of February. And I mean, we're already getting a lot of messages saying, what's the calendar going to be? People are trying to plan their schedules. Is there any way I know we have a lot to do between now and then, and we definitely need that community input, but could we try to move it up to the first week of first meeting of February? Maybe we could, I know the calendar looked like we were going to do the surveys to the public and
First week, early in January, typically we don't give them during December holiday breaks, but
yeah.
So we were looking at that January, I think it was the 9th to the 18th.
Do you think it's possible that we get this on our action agenda by the first meeting of February instead of the second?
I think we're gonna need that time, especially with all the stuff that's going on. If we let them know, all right, look for it at this time, at least they'll know that it's coming, then, and they can
Well, I
act
know,
accordingly.
but,
I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it. There's so much going on. I mean,
Could we?
you
could we
guys are
look
the ones
into
that are
it?
doing the survey
We met
and stuff.
today to discuss the survey, Dr. Janicki, myself, and Dr. Bannicky. So I think we can move that, and if we can continue that date of when it's going to go out to give the community input. What we did in the past was calendar committee met, provided these options. So when you say about the pre-Labor Day to end of the year, that was included in the options that they could vote on as well. So it was outlined in the survey that we were starting on this date and ending on this date. We'll have those options in the survey. I mean, if you're saying, can we get it done? Typically, we say, if you want us to get it done, we can get it done.
I mean, if we could get it done while still getting all the input that we need, I would like to request that we look into that, Madam Chair.
Check it out for us, okay, and then we'll see.
Yeah, I need to try to get the committee to commit to some dates.
Yeah, it just depends on turning it around after we get the data, obviously, you know that, so just FYI. Okay, thank you for asking, okay? Ms. Owens?
Thank you. And I won't belabor things that have already been asked, but on my list was seeing about the time frame. And actually, do we know, and if you don't know off the top of your head, that's okay, do we have a date that we have historically released calendars so that you could say, well, this is in line with when we usually release them, or this is 4 months after when we would usually release them? Where are we standing with when our calendars
This is
are
the
usually
typical
released?
process we use.
So typically, we release the end of February before the
Now,
school
we'd be
year
a
starts?
little bit earlier. The last one took a little bit longer because we revised it after several informational meetings, and typically, I think we were ready to release it a little bit earlier. But I don't think it's been that much earlier than what's on this timeline, Dr. Robertson, if I'm,
Typically, we try to get a lot of the data gathering information done prior to the holidays, with the calendars coming back in January.
Gotcha.
So this is about a month later.
Okay. And I know that there's been fluctuations over the years, whether we've done 2-year calendars or 1-year calendars, and that there was a reason specifically that we only did 1 year so that we can get that input. But just for, as a board, if we could perhaps plan on having the 2-year calendar cycle where we are doing it the in-between, so that there's always a year advance out for people. It is less than 6 months planning time for end of February calendar release to school starting in August. And if we could have just whatever our standard is going to be, that the public knows our standard is, we release in this month, and then we know if we're ahead or behind for our standard. But if we don't have a standard, there's nothing to say that we're doing it well or we're not doing it well. And I have fielded a lot of the same emails that I'm sure that you all have with IEPs and other things that are set to play out for a year, and then the person saying, I'm going to guess at the date that those next meetings can be, because I don't even know if school will be open that day. So, yep, that's, oh, and in regards to the minutes, I do recall us being kind of here at the same place last year. I really would like to have that exact answer of what the definition of seat time or minutes is, so that we can consider that accordingly. I'm fine with us saying that we can't do it if we can't do it, but it would be nice to say, here's the reason we actually can't do it, not some schools can, some schools don't. I think our families may be a little jaded in the surveying, because I've had many people say they felt like, well, I was surveyed, but then you guys did something totally else that wasn't even on the survey options. And so if we can be as specific as we can with them, if we're gonna do surveys, or I think we're gonna lose their input. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Thank you. And I also would like to see the historical survey for this particular calendar since I wasn't on the board at that time. I've gotten a lot of feedback about this calendar from a lot of different groups, and I actually haven't personally heard anything positive. I personally don't really mind it. As a parent, I kind of liked the 4-day week, getting into the school year for my kids, to ramp them back up. But there's been a lot of people in the community that have jokingly called this No School November. My 13-year-old just came to me to complain that he has a 5-day week this week. So I'm not 100% sure that the November thing is working. I do understand the need to find a balance of, the staff days and the adjusted days and, make sure that we're providing resources and time. One of the biggest resources our staff needs is time for planning. We need to make sure we're doing that. But I am also greatly concerned that I recognize from a different point in my life, when I was in a different socioeconomic place, that the way that our schedule is right now would have greatly impacted the quality of life for my family. And that is a big part of the community that we have here in Virginia Beach. The daycares make their schedule sometimes around this. The preschools do it. Sometimes those parents have no choice but to not work. And I know we have Parks and Rec, but Parks and Rec cannot handle every single student that is not in school on that day. So I am also very cognizant of that. So I would like to maybe see us find something that's a little bit more consistent for these students for that reason. And the input I've gotten, my kids will be fine either way. But I do think that we need to make sure that we really take that into account. And when we do that survey, will there be an open-ended box for additional input?
We can add that.
Okay, I think that would be really great because then we can really drive into those input points. Thank you.
If I may, when I keep hearing November, it's a good comment because historically, if you look back, we did not have 2 staff days. And there were years where staff days were election days, where you did close off a part of the building and they went in and that was a election day. And as a teacher and as a principal, I always said first 9 weeks is a marathon. And then all of a sudden you're in sprint. Sprint for 2 weeks, break, sprint for 2 weeks, break, and then you had the holidays. So that dilemma has been there well beyond this year. And so when we brought this forward previously, we've added days in to support staff needs. To your point, which I think is a good one, is what is the impact of that on families? And so I think when you've said this many times, Ms. Owens, I saw many elementary school parents smiling on the first day of school that they were putting them back in school a week before Labor Day. However, what was it going to be like for them in October? What's it going to be like for them in March on those 1 days or this week like you're discussing? So not being able to get that level of feedback from some of our parents is a challenge to really let the whole schedule play out. As well as at the end of the year, how are our teachers feeling with all of those breaks when we've closed at the end of the year? How are they feeling? We're not going to be able to effectively say if this was the right calendar or not. But the challenges you're bringing up are not new. It was not unique to this calendar. It's a challenge that comes with every single one of them. It's the dilemma we have of what decisions do we want to make around it.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Anderson?
So I want to speak to a couple things. First of all, Election Day. As a teacher, I always felt insecure about being in school with students when there were people coming in and out of the building voting. It's a security issue, and that's one of the reasons why the General Assembly made it a holiday. And they highly encourage us to not have school on Election Day. And in Virginia Beach, it would be very difficult it's very difficult even to get a parking place as a teacher on election day. And this coming year, let me just remember in 2024, by the way, it's going to be a presidential election. So it's going to be twice as bad. So I would never support having students in school on election day. Because in Virginia Beach, I think it's probably more than 50 of our schools are used as election precincts. And I think our registrar would be hard pressed to find places other than schools to have precincts. The other thing is, I had a lot of constituents asking, and their first question to me was also, you started school a week early and we are still getting out the same. So I made it a point of explaining that we started school 4 days early, that we had Friday and Monday off of Labor Day weekend, and that one of those days, of those 4 days, was used for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and everybody always applauds that because, especially teachers, but parents as well. You know, what is a half a day on Wednesday? You know, I'm gonna leave town, so I'm not gonna send my kid to school for a half a day. I'm gonna go out of town. So a lot of people understood that, and so I think if you take the time to explain that. The other 3 days were used as teacher work days throughout the year that teachers asked for, oh, by the way. I think if you take the time to explain to your constituents that, then they are more understanding of, okay, so you started school 4 days early, and one of those days is Wednesday, et cetera. So just take the time to explain things to people, because that's why we voted to do that last year to begin with, was so that we would have those days embedded in the calendar throughout the year. I think that's important for people to understand. So somehow make that known when you're doing your survey. You know, that if we start 4 days early, this is the reason why. And then as far as it being called, I've heard it also, no school November. But that's the way the calendar fell this year at the end of the 9 weeks. And of course we had, as I pointed out earlier, we also had Veterans Day, legal holiday on Friday, also embedded within that. So I think those are things that we can look at and maybe refine for our next year's calendar. And yes, I do remember the days when we had in elementary school, we had teacher conferences on voting day. I don't mind doing that. I just don't want the students in our building when there's hundreds of people coming in and out. It's a security thing for me. So, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Delaney. Okay, D, PPEA interim agreement update. Welcome, Melissa Ingram, Executive Director of the Facility Services, and Jack Freeman, our Director. Microphone.
Thank you. I'm going to skip the introductions because I've already gone through them, but appreciate this. So the purpose for this brief is to update you on the interim agreement and design development for 3 of our schools. There's a lot of information here about school designs, and this is what I will call an introductory brief. The next brief will be on January 9th, where we will go in-depth into your design-related questions, and the chair will be collecting those questions from you over the course of the next several weeks, so that staff can develop a brief that will efficiently and effectively answer those questions. So with that, I'd like to invite Ms. Ingram to the podium to walk you through the brief.
All right, thanks, Mr. Freeman. Good afternoon, Chair Riggs, Vice Chair Weems, member of the board, and Dr. Robertson. I am pleased to speak with you today about the 30% design development for the 3 schools in the PPA interim agreement, the result of a great amount of work and public input over the last year for the replacement schools of Princess Anne High School, Williams Elementary School, Bayside 6th grade campus, and Bayside High School. As many on the board have been participants in this process, our journey to the 30% design development has focused on the educational program or the curriculum needs for these schools' replacement projects. In focusing on the educational needs of our 21st century learners, VBCPS strives to prepare every student with critical thinking skills and maximize students' potential in gaining future-ready, career-related skills. Through the design-build PPA process, this input has also helped in exploring guidelines and space-saving strategies or efficiencies while meeting the programmatic needs of the school division. So as many on the board have participated in steps along the way, the public input process has been integral in working towards how efficient these new spaces could be in supporting the needed critical thinking skills of our students. The educational program was explored at a variety of levels, from students, staff, and community leaders. Design continued to 15% schematics or conceptual designs, which helped in understanding of needed spaces to support the curriculum, while finding ways to reduce redundancies or create efficiencies through both adjacencies of spaces or sharing of spaces. As work continued with meeting guidelines and reviews by code officials during summer hiatus from larger community meetings, school leadership held a working session in August to verify efficiencies established at the 15% design, as well as to explore additional efficiencies that could be accommodated without negatively impacting curriculum needs of our students. The large group session of senior leadership helped the design team to understand what could be further refined to meet our students' needs in the most efficient way possible. This work continued through 30% design development, where conceptual spaces became floor plans that were better informed, not only about curriculum needs, which have changed greatly since the turn of the century, but also building, site codes, and safety considerations. So much attention through the process was given to the areas where students would gain educational experiences. Central to this are the learning communities where core classrooms and electives were seen as needing to be integrally connected in order to prepare students to be future ready. The ability to use these learning communities as inclusive areas where students could explore academic topics in multiple ways, enhancing collaboration and critical thinking skills, skills needed by our students in a rapidly changing world. With core coursework such as math, science, social studies, and English embedded in these learning communities, along with electives that pique students' interests and skills, such as world languages, art, music, and career and technical education, or CTE, all being a large component of these learning communities. Input focused on the ability of spaces to foster student interest and growth. So these next several slides, we will take a look at the spaces that make up the educational specifications drafted during this process. First of which is the core academic and supports, which includes the learning communities. These learning communities employ classrooms of a variety of sizes to not only support core subject areas, but also electives, special needs, and CTE, career and technical education needs. With having a variety of spaces, in addition to admin and staff support areas embedded in these learning communities, room utilization would be able to be maximized throughout the day. Through the design process, the number of learning communities was also reduced, saving space on support and circulation spaces such as hallways. This inclusionary approach helps to serve all students to excel in their subjects of interest, or as some put it, reasons why students want to go to school and excel at school, becoming better ready to take on the complexity of the world they will be leaders of. The next section of the educational specifications, instructional activities, include electives such as arts, music, performing arts, the auditorium, and athletics, with the goals of collaboration, hands-on project learning, and flexibility of spaces that support career pathways, technical education, and academy programs, with the continued goal through the design process of maximizing flexibility and room use, along with class sizes. An example of this approach is shown on this slide regarding physical education spaces in the high school designs, where the original input called for a main gym to satisfy 3 courts, and through design work, this was brought down to a main gym with 2 courts, while still providing competition spaces. Adjacent to the main gym, other spaces would also be combined to maximize utilization, such as in the fitness program, also considering aerobics and dance programs, being able to be combined with the wrestling program in a single space through scheduling. A similar approach with gymnastics and auxiliary gym was also seen as an important step in maximizing space for the design concerning high school athletic spaces. Campus common areas, including the media center, Scola, and dining commons, have also been designed with efficiencies in mind. These multi-purpose spaces allow for collaborative group work and discussions and centralize these flexible spaces to support all students and educational program needs. The Scola allows for smaller gathering spaces with retractable seating that can accommodate both regular and special education needs. The Media Center allows for a variety of collaborative spaces in addition to academic research supports. The dining commons of the high school designs utilizes the central corridors to maximize space use while creating a central gathering area for needs both during the day and after school hours. In relation, the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade program, the dining commons area is also centrally located in the combined school and able to be combined to satisfy gathering spaces for the middle school and elementary school larger gathering needs. Learning stairs also help to create smaller gathering spaces for each wing of the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade programs. Central school administration spaces have also been designed to maximize areas for student, staff, and community outreach and support. Administrative spaces are focused to be welcoming and also provide safety for the school as a whole. Co-locating a number of administrative spaces near classrooms also helps to maximize supports for students and staff. Support spaces such as counseling, the school clinic, and the community engagement center are not single-focused areas and are designed with the intent of holistic community support and engagement. When considering building facility spaces, the design focuses on ensuring operations would help extend the life of the building and the systems that support it. Considering the Virginia Beach climate, interior spaces would be utilized to support building systems, often employing mezzanine spaces or volumes above and between spaces that may otherwise go unused. A goal for building systems is also to strive for maintenance to occur without interrupting teaching and learning. The inclusivity of design and sharing of supports has remained a central tenet for all areas of the educational specifications, as well as in the specialized program of district-wide special education at Princess Anne High School. An ability to share spaces and learning opportunities with regular education areas when possible, promoting life skills and showcasing student talent, such as in areas related to culinary skills. NJROTC would continue to be accommodated at one school, Princess Anne High School, for both Princess Anne High School and Bayside High School. The field house at the high school level has undergone many reductions in size throughout the design process, with its central location providing adequate access and use by all athletic programs and competition sports. So this draft rendering with items such as building materials and construction techniques is still being evaluated for efficiencies and cost savings. and shows Princess Anne High School at 30% design development. This view shows the front of the building along Virginia Beach Boulevard with the learning community's 4-story structure on the right-hand side of the main entrance, with a centralized media center on the second floor and admin on the first floor, as well as special education center spaces just to the left of the main entrance. The 30% design has become more refined from the 15% conceptual design that we last showed in our last briefing to you. The 30% design development has been refined with additional educational program efficiencies and as a result of city reviews and constructability refinements. With the front of the building and main entrance along Virginia Beach Boulevard, an auditorium and gym in the rear of the building, leading to outdoor athletic facilities off of the gym to the east of the building. Floor plans of Princess Anne High School shows the admin spaces to the right of the main vestibule with the special education center to the left. The main central spine of the building runs north and south and includes the dining commons area, which can also be considered a student union when dining is not taking place. Following the central hall from the special education center and learning communities leads to both the auditorium and the gym in the rear of the building. As part of the inclusivity of the design, the learning communities, located along the main hall in the center of the building, house a variety of classrooms, including career and technical education spaces in the dark blue, special needs spaces in the green, and core subjects such as science, math, English, and social studies in the light blue, with administrative spaces also co-located in the learning communities. Now taking a look at the Williams Elementary School Bayside 6th grade campus 30% design development rendering gives us a look at the shared courtyard of the school that is off of the central hallway that runs the length of the school, which includes shared spaces for administration, arts, dining, and gym. On the second floor is the media center overlooking the courtyard. You can also see the unique identities of the 4th and 5th grade wing on the right-hand side of the courtyard and the 6th grade wing on the left-hand side of the courtyard, both 2 stories. Again, progressing from 15% design to 30% for this 2-story building, additional refinement and understanding of constructability on site have advanced design even further, with athletic support spaces provided for the school and for the tri-campus area to be shared and programmed with the community as a whole. Savings and efficiencies have been made as they relate to the administrative and support spaces, as well as in the design of centrally located spaces that can be scheduled to be shared. Looking at the floor plan, you can see the shared central hallway running the length of the building with administrative spaces to the right of the front entrance, followed by cafeteria, dining spaces, and gym spaces, as well as shared art, music, and career and technical education spaces on the left of the main entrance. On either side of the open courtyard are the 2-story 4th and 5th grade wing and a 2-story 6th grade wing, inclusive of special needs and support spaces. So our last draft rendering shows a view of Bayside High School, as seen from Haygood Road at the front of the building, with common spaces to the right of the main entrance, the auditorium, and then the gym, leading to outdoor athletic spaces in the rear of the building. Bayside High School core classrooms, special needs, and CTE spaces are within learning communities to the left of the main entrance, on either side of a central courtyard, with 2 stories in the front and 4 stories in the rear. Progressing from 15% design, the 30% design has been further refined to understand greater constructability of the site, with athletic spaces to the rear of the building and a courtyard or extended outdoor learning areas accessible to the wings of the learning communities. Looking at the floor plans, on the first floor of the proposed Bayside High School, administrative spaces are located on the left side of the main entrance, followed by a Scola and the learning communities around a central courtyard, with the Health Sciences Academy accommodated on the first floor, along with art, special needs, core classrooms, and elective CTE spaces. The more common spaces, auditorium and gym, are on the right side of the main entrance, with the central hall also used as a dining commons, with access to outdoor learning and gathering spaces. The inclusive learning communities continue to the second floor in the front of the building and continue to the second, third, and fourth floors in the rear of the building, allowing natural light into the outdoor learning areas of the courtyard. As with our other schools, common spaces are able to be used for community events both during and after school hours, with the classroom wings of the learning communities closed off to the public when needed. So as a recap, all three schools strive to create these 21st century learning spaces to support curriculum needs and critical thinking skills. Buildings are designed to be flexible and adaptable over time to support changing needs. Opportunities for this PPA process are considered in terms of cost savings related to an earlier completion of the three schools, avoiding years of inflation through creating efficiencies in spaces and through assessing the cost of constructability with the contractor and the design team working together through design, and in having a guaranteed maximum price versus a surprise low bid price at the end of the process. Understanding cost and working with budget development prior to entering into a construction contract. So in draft for your review is the educational program for high schools, summarizing space needs for each of the categories we've just reviewed of the educational specifications. The Bayside High School prototype school is shown on the left at roughly 336,000 square feet, and Princess Anne High School is shown to the right at roughly 340,000 square feet. With both of these high schools having additional career technical education spaces than we would otherwise formally have had. And also noting that the Special Education Center at Princess Anne High School accommodates district-wide needs. The next slide takes a look at the educational program and space needs for Williams Elementary School Bayside sixth grade program, which is unique as it's a fourth, fifth, sixth grade program meeting both elementary school and middle school curriculum needs. The building is roughly 172,000 square feet with identifiable wings for each of the learning communities and a variety of shared spaces in the campus core, offices, and support areas. Our design team is currently finalizing comment reviews in order to derive a GMP, or guaranteed maximum price. We will continue with project finance planning, working with budget leadership at both the school board and city council level. We intend to come back to you in January for discussion of the guaranteed maximum price and the proposed square footage. After receiving this information, staff will review project information and make a recommendation on whether or not to proceed with the PPEA process. If recommending proceeding with the PPEA process, the school division would look for action in the February-March timeframe. With our next steps to continue to work with the contractor and design team on receipt of a guaranteed maximum price and proposed square footage for these three schools, we intend to brief the school board again on January 9th, 2024, and would like any questions you might have related to this brief sent to the chair of the board by December 1st, 2023. So I thank you for your time today and for the participation of the community during this extensive design process. At this time, I'd like to take any questions on the 30% design that we've just reviewed.
Ms. Melnick.
Did you say that Bayside and Princess Anne would share space for NJROTC?
Yes, they currently do today. So Bayside High School students who participate in NJROTC participate in that program at Princess Anne High School. So look, we just kept that efficiency going, looking at both schools.
I did not know that. I didn't either. Yeah.
We have that in several high schools.
No, I did not know that. So my other question is, when the first guaranteed maximum price was announced, was there square footage attached to that?
So we are still deriving comments. We're still looking at comment reviews
Okay.
From various stakeholders in order to determine if we can even decrease the square footage any less. We did have the educational specifications here drafted for you today. And as I mentioned, the design team is diligently working to look at any comment reviews to see how that could affect the price.
Okay.
Really concentrating on curriculum need spaces to make sure
Right.
that they're supporting those.
And I actually really appreciate that because this part where we engage the community in the conversations about what they want should not necessarily be the time that we're doing value engineering. And I've said that from the very beginning, like, let's hear what people want first, and then you go back and value engineer. So I'm glad to see that the community's been engaged and that they're telling you really what they'd like to see in those spaces.
And the engagement has been surprisingly helpful, well, not unsurprisingly helpful, but it's been, even though people understood throughout the process we were looking for efficiencies, people were creative. And they were saying, oh, well, I would, one of the most important things we heard from the students is, I would love to participate in technical and career education, but I got to go all the way to the other side of the building. So, that was really helped us to make sure it was included in our learning communities so that, they would have more of an opportunity to participate without leaving their core community for their high school. So I think, and even, teachers, principals, parents had a lot of great ideas in terms of creating efficiencies where they saw there was a possibility. So we got a lot of great ideas from the public input of all of our stakeholders.
Mr. Callen.
Two requests. First, is it possible to obtain a copy of your notes since they were much more exhaustive than what was available to me so that I can continue my learning curve and benefit from the insights that you read off, but I wasn't able to follow as closely?
Yes, sure, I can get that to you all. I'll go through
Great.
the board. Yeah.
Second question, on the page that did the math relative to arriving at total square footage,
Mhm.
I'm not following the math. And if I look at Princess Anne High School as one example, and I walk through, we get to total net square footage of 200,100. And then the next bold print down below is 284,142, but it doesn't give me the math that's involved in how you arrived at that. So in helping me understand just the process and the calculations that are involved, can you help me understand what's there?
I'll speak to it briefly because we're going to go over it in detail, but, the net square footage talks to, I might need 800 square feet for a classroom. What's not included in that net square footage is the width of the walls, the hallways, restrooms that might need to support the spaces. So that is where the gross square footage comes into play. And as we're developing the educational specifications, that detail comes out in the floor plans, which is another reason the design team is, working through comments right now to look at the constructability of the building, where the educational specifications are focused on the needs of the curriculum and those teaching stations that are needed for the curriculum. It focuses on that net area because we're not thinking of the thickness of the wall or the fact that we need a mechanical room behind us or an AV room behind us to be able to hold this meeting today. So that's where the gross square footage comes into play.
Could you include what you just described, though, as a mathematical component in the equation, just so that you follow it correctly?
I will do my best, yes. And again, we will, on January 9th, happy to take any questions between now and then, but we'll go into more detail on the square footage and the guaranteed maximum price at that time, too.
Thank you.
Ms. Manning.
So I won't go into detail on this because you just said that we're going to go into more detail the next time on the square footage. But the numbers that I'm looking at are significantly larger than our existing structures. And I know I've talked about this before. But I make that point to say it's significantly larger, yet I think you said that the wrestlers and the dancers will be sharing a space? Did I hear that right?
Yes, so we currently do not have sufficient spaces in our schools today to accommodate all these needs that we have in these newer buildings. There are also building codes that also have to be addressed that have been changed since the earlier buildings as well.
So right now, wrestlers are not sharing the space with dancers. I know that. And so it seems you can't move mats around, you know, I mean, that just seems unworkable. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But right now, we're not combining those, so I don't know why we would be combining those in a building that's 50% larger than the current one.
Yeah, Ms. Manning, that's a good question. So I think the wrestling room is used after school for practices, but during the school day, it could be used for a fitness room, which has been the case when I was a wrestling coach.
Picking up all the mats, or are they on the mats?
No, they're on the mats.
So those mats are very expensive. So if you're doing a lot of other stuff not affiliated with wrestling, then you're ruining the mats.
Yeah,
So-
you have to go in there with no shoes. So you go in there with socks
Well,
and fitness room.
I mean,
yeah.
I've been in the wrestling room at many of our high schools, and they're not being shared right now. So I'm just,
During the school day, they are being used. They are.
And so there was, from the public input, the desire to have separate spaces. And that's something that we looked at for all different programs to where we could combine them. This was something where we had both administration at the school, users of these spaces also give us input on as well.
okay. And just the last comment, I think everyone did a fantastic job. I was so impressed with all the community input and everybody that was there. The staff did a great job. Mr. Ballard's team did a great job. One thing that I didn't see that I'd requested from the very beginning that never happened was if someone's asking for, you know, a wish list item, well, no one was ever given costs for anything. I asked for costs, no one was ever given costs. So when we're talking about what people want in buildings, I've always said, if people actually know what the cost is, they probably won't want it. So I'm gonna be keeping that into consideration when we're making these final decisions.
Absolutely, and the design team is currently going over those costs now, trying to get, bids and understanding what prices are. As we all know, prices have really changed in the last several years, so they're doing their due diligence right now to get us the, most accurate costs for that guaranteed maximum price.
Ms. Brown?
Thank you. And so I did also enjoy the process of the community input. I do share some concerns as well that the cost was never brought up. But I do have a question. Can you remind me, please, the Bayside High School, what is that, a prototype? Is Green Run and First Colonial? Were there any other schools?
And Kempsville High School, ma'am.
Kempsville High School, okay.
Green Run High School,
Yeah,
First Colonial
Green Run.
High School, and Kempsville High School would be used for, that would use that prototype.
Okay, so, and I know you're saying we're gonna bring up the square footage thing, but I am going to bring it up again because I'm concerned about it because I'm concerned about the overall cost, the cost of managing that additional space, the cost of building that additional space. I'm not 100% sure in the community input that they would want it so large if they knew that we wouldn't be able to afford it. I am looking also here at what the city council presented for the PPEA interim agreement that was passed. And it said that there was going to be scalable options. Are we going to be presented with the scalability also in January to see if there's any room for more consideration to reduce the square footage?
Yes, that will be part
Okay.
of that discussion.
Okay, so, and then just final, Bayside's an increase of 135,000 square feet. Princess Anne, 111. Lansdowne High School is 310,000 square feet, which is significantly less than both of those, with a student population of 300 or 400 more than both of those, and in fact, all of those buildings. I think Kellum was too large. I wasn't on this board when that happened. But I don't think that it means that we need to continue building our buildings that large. So, thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Looking at slide number 6, where you talked about efficiencies and design considerations, and you talked about the main gymnasium being reduced to 2 main. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes.
And was this done primarily just to reduce the cost? Square footage? And then also explain to me, I'm also concerned about the mezzanine idea of combining, I'm also the same reason that Miss Manning brought up about wrestling and et cetera, utilizing those mats throughout the day. And how would that mezzanine work exactly? I mean, can you explain a little bit more about that?
So in terms of the gym, we have gone through this exercise with the design team and almost all of our spaces in the schools, just to look at what are the program needs. Competition is an important one, and also supporting the physical education requirements for the division. So looking at the size of class sizes and the use needed at the building, and then also the competition need, it was determined that rather than having the 3 stacked gyms, as you see in the first example there, we were able to have 2 stacked gyms that would most likely be used as an open area during physical education time during the school day, and then a more robust competition gym turned perpendicular so that we would have ample space for competitions as well. So, you know, in order to reduce the square footage, we had to do exercises such as these. And this was one that people looked at favorably because it also did meet the programmatic needs for the division.
Okay, so one of the things that we talked about, at least in the design team that I was a part of, was that there would be a going around the gym, there would be a track.
Yes.
Is this still happening?
Yes, so the volume of space, we're able to put a track above this gym area, and we're also able to stack and accommodate additional seating up in that mezzanine area as well to accommodate, you know, more participants in that space when gathering is
So in the mezzanine
needed.
area, on the same level as the track, then would
Correct.
be the fitness area and the.
No, those are actually separate spaces, adjacent spaces to the main gym. So we have the auxiliary gym, which is used for, also for gymnastics. We do have a weight room, and then we also have the wrestling room, which is combined with aerobics, dance, and fitness. And again, used at different times of the day for different needs based on scheduling.
Okay, and you've spoken primarily also with physical education teachers and coaches about this as well? I mean, do we have quite a bit of physical education teachers input on this?
Absolutely. So, you know, we've had our teaching and learning, our curriculum experts review all of these plans and designs throughout the process and be participants, as well as our student activity coordinator leadership over in student support services, and as well as city parks and recreation staff involved as stakeholders in the process because, you know, as you know, some of these spaces are also used for other community uses. So we've had throughout the process quite a bit of input all throughout, beginning, middle, and end. And one of the things that the design team is diligently working on right now is going through numerous comments from all of these stakeholders to ensure that they are designing the right spaces to meet the needs that people commented on.
So one of the people that I spoke to primarily, though, and it has nothing to do with this particular slide, it has to do with another slide, has to do with orchestra and utilizing one space for orchestra and then utilizing it for another, as another space as well. Do you remember that?
Yes, correct. So one of the things, and I think you're talking about Princess Anne High School as
Yes.
well. So utilizing the orchestra band spaces around the stage area and then having additional area if needed to be able to spill out onto the stage when the stage isn't being used. So able to, still have a compact space that is able to satisfy class requirements for those needs. But if you have additional gathering needed, you don't have to utilize the whole auditorium. You can use maybe just segments of the stage area there to be able to accommodate more users to a space if you have two classes maybe coming together or band and orchestra coming together for an exercise and not having to use up the entire auditorium.
We also talked about utilizing the Scola as possible, and it would depend on how that room is insulated as part of being utilized for orchestra as well.
Absolutely, and the Scolas are often right off of the main hallways, which are also the dining commons, when we don't have lunch going on, turn into student union spaces where, students can collaborate. But one of the other benefits of the Scola is the retractable seating that was designed in it. So, you can have stacked seating for your audience, and then also with the flat seating, combine events or special education can go in there and also have a great gathering space without using that retractable seating, having an open floor area for their needs.
Thank you.
Ms. Weems?
Thank you. I will send in some questions about the gym space. And everybody knows I love PE, I love sports, but I do have some concerns about the gym space. But refresh my memory, in our high schools, who is required to take physical education? Is it just the 2 grades still?
Ninth and 10th grade are required, and then you have elective PE at 11 and 12. We also have some students who take advantage of taking 9th or 10th grade PE during the summer.
Right.
So they can free up their schedule.
Okay. Could I have some information, just take last year, of how many students at a typical high school actually took PE in person? Could I get that from somebody?
Yes,
Mr.
we can
Delaney?
get that information for you.
If you're a 9th or 10th grader, are there any waivers? Can you do a waiver to not play PE?
It's a graduation requirement.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but I'd like to have those numbers, because again, the gym space seems a little excessive, but I want to look at that, but I'll send in my questions. Also, I love how you have the CT classes in the work area that you say, or the work community, or I forgot what you called it, Melissa. The CTE classes in the.
So in the learning communities.
In the learning community.
Exactly.
Okay. I do like that, and we invited Ms. Ingram to come to the Workforce Development Committee, and she explained that. So I think that's great, and I think that it will help actually spark some interest in some students who may have never even thought to take one of these classes because they've never been exposed to it, and it's the other side of the building or the other floor, and they will never be exposed to it. So I really do like that idea. Now, I'm sure that it is more expensive to have them spread out. Is that an assumption or not?
Well, there are some CTE spaces that require 2 stories for the spaces, and they have been adequately accommodated adjacent to other 2-story spaces, or also in consideration of other needs that, might be able to use those 2-story spaces. But there are some that, such as like a digital art or, classroom areas for flexible music and things like that for career pathways, are life skills as well, that might not require as much of a height in the space. And so careful consideration was given to both the rooms that needed the 2-story space and then the rooms that needed the 1-story space, and then what adjacencies they're near as well. So, does it make sense if they're near, a science classroom, if it's culinary arts, that, sharing the infrastructure there, or does it make sense, adjacent to art, you have IMAC labs, so that even when, you're not possibly scheduling the art classroom or the IMAC classroom, one can be used for the other. And again, that's how we were able to reduce teaching stations as part of this process,
Okay.
those adjacencies.
Okay, and I know the planning, that I attended, I know one of the planning sessions actually bounced to 4 different tables, and CTE was brought up at every single table, so I'm thrilled to see that you've added, 13, that there'll be 13, 14, 15 classes of this at the high schools.
Absolutely, almost double of what we would normally see,
Okay,
so.
that's awesome. Also, well, what was brought up too, that, I'm thinking of one particular day, also at different tables, was the idea of let's use these buildings for more of the community, like you said, open part of it, but not have access to the whole building, but if it's part of it, even CTE classes at night, you know, or gym space or whatever, but just to open that. So I'll have some questions about that as far as management and cost and all that, but I think that's an excellent idea to really partner with the community on some of this space.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
And all the information you've given us.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we really, Miss Linetti, do we have time? We have 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Do you want to do it closed? Do you want to just wait? Okay. Okay. All right, so, we're not going to have a closed session. We're going to have our school board recess at this time.